And welcome to the Comic Corner, your home for comic book news, reviews, and interviews. My name is Damon. I am your host. And joining me today, we'll have our two co-hosts as always. But AF's running a little bit late, so he'll be here in just a moment. The beauty of doing live streaming. TJ, though, good morning to you.
Good morning, my friend. How are you? I'm excited to talk some great comics. We had a beefy week this week.
Oh my goodness, a very beefy week, very, very heavy week. We managed to get pretty much all of the main pulls into the show today, so that is very, very exciting, including a book that we weren't going to originally talk about, but it made such a splash, such headlines, such a talk amongst the interwebs that we just had to bring it up. So let's just get into the rundown. Face it, Tiger. Mary Jane Watson is Venom. And we'll get into that in just a minute. We'll let that kind of simmer and settle. Give us your thoughts here if you have any good ones on that. Another absolute title just dropped this week. This is Absolute Green Lantern. Very exciting. We'll chat about that. And sticking in the Absolute universe, welcome to Smallville, kid. We didn't think that Clark would, or technically not Clark, Kal-El would end up in Smallville, after what Jason Aaron told us many times ago. But yeah, no, he's in Smallville for a little bit, so we'll talk about that. But first, TJ. Okay. He is biting his tongue. So I do want to preface that neither of us have actually read this book. So we will not be judging this book at all. Actually, by reviews, people seem to be liking it. More than expected, at least. It's not getting rave reviews, but it's getting more positive than to be expected with all the internet buzz and clamor and uproar that this created. This was leaked, I believe, like last Friday or Saturday overnight, probably, when some comic shops started getting their orders and getting deliveries in and everything. That Mary Jane Watson is the all-new Venom. But I do want to bring this up because my lovely co-host here, TJ, infamously or famously or both, has pulled so much Venom, so many Venom comics, that he included all of Venom War. But you do love Venom. You love Venom. And Venom's gone through a lot of changes throughout the years, especially recently. Venom War, we had King in Black, some of the high points. Now, as I mentioned, you have not read this issue yet, so we will not judge this issue. But the idea of it all and why you love Venom and you are not reading this book, even from a writer, Al Ewing, which you really like. And we'll talk about an Al Ewing book that you really like later on.
Mm-hmm.
TJ, first of all, when you first saw this news, your initial thoughts. And you can curse. It's early.
Oh yeah, we're past our couple minutes. Well, Damon, as you said, I am a big fan of Venom. I have been faithfully pulling Venom since Donny Cates' run, all the way through Al Ewing's run. I stuck with it when everyone was saying it was too slow and it was this and that. I was a big proponent, like, we got to stick with it, yada, yada, yada. When I first heard this news, I absolutely hated it. I absolutely hated it. And I will also preface this, like you said. So I have all of the all new Venom, but I just have fallen off since Venom War. So I still need to catch up. So maybe I'm not going to just completely write the idea off, but on its face, I really do not like it. And I have a couple reasons for that. But my main reason is, so as a Venom fan, and I also want to shout out my amazing co-host over on Sons of Mjolnir, Evie, who is our Venom expert, if you would. And I know that she probably has a lot of thoughts on this. But it just feels like we got to such a big place for both Venom and Eddie Brock with King in Black. Like he fully stepped out of that shadow of the 90s that he's been stuck in for so long. finally becoming like a full-fledged hero. And then after that, in Al Ewing's own run, he was like the symbiote god, like time, like could go all across time, do all this crazy stuff. So to see Venom and Eddie Brock go from all the way here of being a literal symbiote god, and now Eddie Brock's like a freaking detective with Carnage, and Mary Jane is Venom. Like I don't know. It just feels like Eddie Brock Venom took a major step down. It seems like they were kind of afraid to continue on with Venom at this kind of high spot. They're like, oh no, we need to bring this dude back down to, typical Spidey villain. So that's kind of how it reads. I'm not saying that's how it is. That's just kind of how it feels and reads for me. So it's like very disappointing. But like I said, I don't know what's going on with the all new Venom. I need to catch up. And also, I don't know anything about what's going on with Mary Jane either. We were talking about the jackpot. I don't know what the heck that is. I don't know what's going on with her. So again, maybe with all of this other context I don't have, I would be more open to it. But again, my major thing is I feel like Cates brought Venom to such a higher tier than he had ever been, and it just kind of feels like we're throwing that away.
I understand the frustration there. And AF, welcome to the show. We just, as you know, we just started. We mentioned previously, neither of the two of us, I know you haven't either, have actually read this issue of All New Venom, revealing that Mary Jane Watson is the new Venom. But on the concept of it, TJ is a very, very big fan of Venom, very big fan of Eddie Brock, loves Donny Cates' run, and now we have resulted into a point where Mary Jane Watson, who is also Jackpot, a superhero who has a very magical wristband attached to her that runs like a slot machine, and whatever the goodness or badness of the results results in the quality of powers she gets. It's essentially whatever the writer wants it for the scenario type of powers.
Dude, what are we doing over there?
You hit the jackpot.
What are we doing over there?
Hate it. Like,
so I'm
just gonna go straight into it. I don't like this. I don't like that they're doing all of these different things with Mary Jane. Let her be a strong, independent woman on her own. Why give her superpowers? Why merge her with a Venom symbiote? Just let Mary Jane be Mary Jane. She is a cool character as is.
Out of all the things we could have done with Mary Jane to add to her character, I know we've been having Spider-Man comics now for years. Mary Jane Watson has been a part of Peter Parker's life for years. And when we throw in the Gwen Stacy of it all, with the Gwen Poole of it all too, right? When we add that factor, we add the Paul factor, and everything that's resulted to this moment, it's just, I feel like if we wanted to do something, there was some cooler and better options. We go back now, and I hate to just harp on like this point for so long, but we go back now to when Ms. Marvel was killed in a Spider-Man book. And I remember for months, we were speculating who was going to die, and everyone was pointing at MJ. Everyone was pointing at MJ. And when they brought Ms. Marvel back as mutant, all of us kind of sat back and I'm like, man, actually, it would have been kind of cool if they made MJ a mutant.
Yep.
You could have done a lot with that.
That would have been cool.
And I think, honestly, that would have been, out of all the possibilities we've seen with Mary Jane to like add to her character, to put it in a different direction, that would have been a more interesting choice than this. The jackpot thing is whatever. Like, to me, that's whatever. It's just,
it exists.
A thing. It exists. I don't find it interesting. Whatever. But I don't know. Mary Jane Watson, the new Venom. So you were keeping up with it enough to know where like Luke Cage was a candidate, Madame Mask was a candidate, Robbie Robertson was a candidate, Rick Jones was a candidate.
Well, I'm pretty sure Rick Jones is sleeper right now.
Yes.
And that was my original to me, that would have made the most sense for it to be Sleeper. But again,
For
I
those who
didn't.
don't know, TJ, who is Rick
Oh
Jones?
yeah. So Rick Jones, I mean, old school character, was friends with the Hulk, all that kind of stuff, but currently is the host of a symbiote called Sleeper. And Sleeper was actually one of the only symbiotes to be able to survive without a host for a very long time. So he's a serious deal, Sleeper. And so, like I said, I thought the color scheme is also very similar, the black and yellow. So to me, I thought that would have been the best pick, and it made the most sense to me, and also a character I've really wanted to see more of. So I mean, yeah, it kind of sucks that it's not Sleeper. I thought that would have been the best option. But yeah, like I said, I started Venom War, but I need to finish. So I don't even know like how this new symbiote came to be. But yeah, out of all the options we had, I think I would have taken any one of them over Mary Jane, to be honest.
Oh boy. Oh no.
Yeah,
Not
TJ.
Paul. But yes, as we said, face it, Tiger, because Mary Jane Watson is the new Venom. Richard's got to be the most dude who is always just around history in the history
Yeah,
of comics.
literally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No,
Before we move on from
Yeah.
Mary Jane, I'm just going to go back to a conversation you and I had in the week, Damon, when we
Okay.
were speculating about Sadie Sink in Spider-Man 4,
Oh boy.
and the fact that she could possibly be
Mhm.
Jackpot after that Brand New Day title. TJ, what do you think about that?
I mean, I don't care what they call her, but if she's Mary Jane, we talked about this before AF. If she's Mary Jane, I think that's super lame and like almost like bordering the line of racist, in my opinion. Like we got an MJ, like why, like that's I would not like that at all. So if she's Jackpot and just like another, character, that's fine with me. But if she's like Mary Jane, like, oh, just kidding, what's her face is just MJ, like that's stupid. I don't like that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it tomorrow on the Agents of Phantom podcast. So that's a good tee into that as to the who is Jackpot of it all, because not only is Mary Jane in the history of comics Jackpot, she's actually the third and most recent. But we'll get into that tomorrow. Let's talk about some books that came out this week. Whew. This is Absolute Green Lantern #1, written by Al Ewing. Al Ewing getting a lot of
this week, dude.
Getting a lot of title credit this week. Artist John Oy Lindsay and letterer Lucas Gattoni. This is a swing, as every Absolute book is. We have in this universe, for those who do not know what this Absolute universe is, this is a brand new universe in DC Comics where instead of, let's say, Superman energy kind of like being the down to the atom, goodness wins in all scenarios. In this universe, Darkseid has control, and there's just a little bit of chaotic evilness everywhere. So, in this universe, we go down to, I believe it's Nevada, TJ?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I believe it's Nevada. We're in the desert. All your classic Lantern characters are all just together in this tiny town in Nevada, naturally as they do, and this giant lantern symbol falls from the sky, and chaos ensues. Characters get powers, news breaks out. It's a very Al Ewing first issue. It's a little slow in a way. You don't get like that big bam moment, but it introduces some very cool ideas before we get into spoilers. TJ, what did you think about Absolute Green Lantern #1?
First of all, I just want to say shout out to all our fellow agents and friends in the chat. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's always great when you guys participate. But I will. Oh, look, we got a little surprise too. Whoops. That's it. That's all he gets. But I thought it was good. It was good. Like we talked about, I enjoyed it. I love the setup that Al is a setup guy. We talked about this with Immortal Thor. Like the first couple 5, maybe even 10 issues was a lot of setup. So I'm not it's kind of what I expected. But like we talked about, and I feel similarly to Absolute Flash, which also Scott Snyder has said that this next phase is a little different than the first phase of Absolute. But again, it just, like you said, it to me it lacked that like punch that I feel like that the first three Absolute titles, especially in their issue 1, kind of left us with. Like we talked about Bruce, Batman at the town hall meeting, in Wonder Woman, it's her in hell, and like the big monster shows up.
Yeah.
This was great setup, and I'm like super interested and excited for it, but it did not leave me with like a, oh man, oh crap kind of moment. So, like I said, I liked it, just wasn't like, it wasn't a hoot and holler for me. It wasn't a hoot and holler book for me.
I'll disagree with that. And with that, I'm going to put up a little bit of a spoiler warning. So if you do not want spoilers, plug your ears. But the big reveal here is that Joe essentially gets the Green Lantern. She becomes a Green Lantern. But other people in the area when it dropped, such as Hal Jordan, he didn't get the Green Lantern, AF. It looks like Hal got the Black Lantern.
Oh,
Immediately. And he is
that's interesting.
freaking out. He is freaking out. So that's the wild thing going on here with Hal Jordan, is he's kind of like got like this big black negative zone type of arm. People around him are dying. He's freaking out. And Joe's the one at the end of this issue to come up to him and say, is everything okay? Like, what's going on? We need to talk, because it's been weeks since that whole lantern fell from the sky in the middle of Nevada, and Hal's been crossing the country in a panic mode. So, Tito, what do you think about that reveal? Like, was that not like that reveal didn't like?
No, that totally,
Yeah.
that would have been the punch. The only thing is that we saw that in the previews. Like, that was like the kind of marketing page of the book. So again, I think if they would have kept that under wraps, that would have been the oh crap moment for me. But again, that doesn't mean I didn't like it. I really did enjoy it. And like I said, I'm, like you said, the Black Lantern stuff, that's super interesting. It just, again, I wanted a little like, it, like, again, there's a little bit more oomph is the best way I could really put it.
If John Stewart shows up in the next issue with some sort of Red Lantern type of powers,
hootin' hollering, dude.
Okay.
I am hootin' hollering.
Okay.
Rageful.
So we're getting there. We're getting there with this Absolute Universe. As you mentioned, this is different from the original 3. Absolute Flash, a lot different from the original 3. Absolute Martian Manhunter, wildly different from the original 3. And this too. So I think this is an interesting turn on the Absolute Universe. But we'll see. AF, go on.
Yeah, so do you guys think that the bar was just set so high with those first 3 Absolute books, that I know it's a sort of different creative tone that they are going for now, but it just seems like I read Absolute Wonder Woman, Absolute Batman, Absolute Superman, and those first issues compared to Absolute Flash, even though I loved Absolute Flash, but I don't know, I just felt more. I felt so much more while reading the number ones of those first 3 compared to everything else that's coming out now. I don't know. Do you guys agree with that sort of sentiment?
I think so far it's very hard to tell with these new number ones we just got. They're number 1 issues, right? We are minutes in essentially into those stories. Yeah. I think the biggest change is in those first 3, you can't go too crazy with Bruce's character. You can't go too crazy with Diana's character, and you cannot go too crazy with Superman, with the character of them. Those character cores still had to be the same. And I feel like the character cores of these 3 new titles have a little bit more leniency to do their own thing, to become their own versions of those characters. So Wally may not be so much as like a jokester as we know him
Yeah.
to be. He's a little more nervous. I'm going to be honest. I don't know much about Joe. I'm really looking forward to see more of Joe. I'm not a Green Lantern reader at all. You know that. You are actually, funny enough, the Green Lantern reader here. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts when you get a hold of this book.
Yeah.
And same thing with like Martian Manhunter. That is a swing that's vastly
Out
different.
of the universe.
Yeah, vastly different than John Johns that we know. So I think that is the difference between these new three and the previous three. Is like the characters themselves. It's not like you change where they're from. You're changing almost most everything about them. And I'm okay with that with some of, like, you know, when you're not Trinity characters. So we'll see.
Can I just add one quick thing on that
Yeah.
before we move on? I totally agree, and I also feel like, which kind of going to what Scott Snyder was saying about this next kind of phase is, and even just like as we're talking about it, seems like this next phase, like Absolute Flash, Absolute Lantern, are a little bit more introspective than say the, like you said, because the Trinity kind of has these solid molds, right? And while they're very different, they still kind of fit there. But this next phase seems a lot, like you said, a lot more bigger swings, and again, more like we have Wally, who is dealing with anxiety. We have the Green Lantern. We see Hal is obviously a little bit kind of unstable, you know, with this, you know, the Black Lantern thing. And then even in Martian Manhunter, like the big kind of theme of that is John, the detective, the human, thinks he's going crazy. Like he thinks he like has lost his mind. So it feels like this phase is dealing more with introspective kind of issues as opposed to outward issues that the first three dealt with. So thinking about it that way kind of brings me around, like makes me understand why these would be maybe a little slower than the kind of big explosive introduction we got with the first three.
TJ says he wants to be a Blue Lantern. AF, before we move on to the next book, Guy Gardner, what lantern color are you giving him?
Oh,
he really should be the red one, but like we can go crazy. We can give him yellow.
I don't think giving him a red one would work out well because he has such a huge ego, and that mixed with like rage and anger and all of those bad things, I don't think that's a recipe for success. Yeah, I don't know actually.
I'm gonna go fear. Because he's like funny and like, you know, kind of like goofy, so I think that would be cool. And to TJ's comment about the Blue Lantern, I want John to be a Blue Lantern. You said the Red Lantern. John is a Blue Lantern would be great.
Perfect. That's a great call. That's a great call. Absolute Superman number 5, start of a brand new arc. This is written by Jason Aaron. New artist for this little mini story that we're kind of going with, Carmine Di Giandomenico, colorist Ulysses Areola, and letter Becca Carey. This tells a story of what happened to Kal-El when he finally crashed down to Earth. We did not think Kal-El had crashed down to Earth, specifically Smallville. That's what Jason Aaron said. Turns out he may have just been kind of hiding that a little bit. May have been hiding that a little bit. I love this Absolute Superman. TJ and I go back and forth on it almost every month, every week on which Absolute title is our favorite. Whether it's like Wonder Woman has an issue, it's like Wonder Woman's my favorite. Then Absolute Superman issue comes out, it's like, ooh, maybe Superman's my favorite now, right?
Literally everyone, it's like, oh, that's my favorite. Oh, nope, that's my favorite. Like they just continuously are topping what they've done before.
This is a Superman who, at a young age, it looked like he's about like maybe 10, 12 years old by the time he crashes down to Earth, crashes onto the Kent's farm, doesn't speak a lick of English, obviously. He's just speaking Kryptonian. Kent's have no idea what he's saying, and he has a suit that his parents made him that is essentially almost like a Brainiac level AI powered suit in a way, helping him out. But when he crashed on Earth, his suit's kind of decommissioned for a little bit. It's got to recharge. So he's seeing the world through the eyes of the Kents. And of course, there's some beautiful moments in here, like truly beautiful moments where Pa Kent looks at the young boy and they take him in. And he's like, man, I do not know what Martha would have done if you didn't come here. Like, she needed you because this farm is literally dying. Lazarus Corp, by the way, is completely, like, intentionally killing this farm. They have actual drones up in the air making sure that it doesn't rain. Gives me a little bit of a chuckle. And then Ma Kent is looking at this young Superman and also saying, you know, I don't know what Pa Kent would do if it wasn't for you, because he needed something. So they're both looking at him like he is like their boy saver, the boy wonder. The AI soul suit comes back online. He learns to speak English. They're treating him, very nicely, very well. And then we get a little bit of some introduction to the Lazarus Corp because they deal with also AF immigration. And what? Good Lord. And
what did you think of Absolute Superman?
I know.
Nat.
Yes.
I think she loved it.
And what did the Lazarus immigration people do to AF? They try to take him away. So Superman since then has been on the run.
On brand.
Very on brand. Very on brand. The big reveal at the end of this issue, I will not spoil. But Brainiac, who we know, who has been puppeteering some things going on in this universe, has been working with someone. And that someone, AF, I do not think you will see coming if you're thinking just in the Superman sense. If you open your eyes a little bit, it's right in front of you. But if you're thinking just in the Superman sense, I do not think you would see that coming. TJ, what did you think about this issue?
I really liked it. Sorry, I'm laughing at TJ's comment. It says AF turned into a baby. But I loved it, man. Like we said, it feels like every single issue is better than the last, and this continues that trend. It's not as action-packed as maybe some of the other issues are, but it hits that emotional vein so perfectly. I'm so glad. I mean, it's like, I knew it was impossible for the Kents not to show up in some fashion in a Superman book, but to see that he actually has come in contact with them and like at least spent a little time with them, I love it. I love it. Maybe that's a little too close to the main universe for some people, but I love it. I think it was much needed, and it really sets us forward.
There's a beautiful line in here, a tragic line, right before Superman flies away, where he says, I landed here and I was crying because I saw a planet. Came from a planet that I could not save and I had to flee. And I go to one where I already know I cannot save.
Oh.
Tragic line.
Damn Jason Aaron, man.
It's a good line. It's a good line. But because he's Superman, he still tries anyway. He's still around, going around the world to some of the poorest places around the globe to help people out as much as he can. And it also answers all the way back to, I think it was issue 1 or 2, where we saw Ma Kent in the retirement facility, the hospice facility, calling out for the Star Boy. And we're like, we didn't think she met Superman yet. Turns out she did.
Plot twist.
Plot twist. And Lois Lane at the very end goes to Ma Kent because she's like, I know you've had contact with this individual before, and she's investigating. And that's where we go back to Brainiac, and he's like, it's all going a part of plan, because that's what Brainiac does. That is what Brainiac does. Very good issue. Very, very good issue. We go over to Marvel. Marvel's alternate universe, the Ultimate Universe, is his Ultimate X-Men number 14, written and painted beautifully by Peach Momoko and letters from Travis Lanham. I just did a lot of talking in that last issue, TJ. So I just want to know. This has been the book that's been the different book, the strange book, the one that is very far left field. What did you think about this issue?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Like we have been really enjoying this book, I think, since
Mhm.
the beginning. A lot of people, like you said, are kind of back and forth on it, especially because it is so different, but that's what I love about it. And I mean, this issue is no different. We got kind of semi conclusion from issue 13. Issue 13, we got the big fight kind of breakout between everybody. And this issue again cleaned that up nicely, but there are some things which I think is intentional that I'm still not super clear on, specifically with Kageyama and Hisaku. But I mean, it's a great issue. It
Mm.
continues the story beautifully. It leaves us with some kind of big implications to what's coming, especially like with Viper and the Maker Secret Council. Because to
Mhm.
me, that's been one of the biggest questions this whole time. Like, what is Viper's plan? Viper and the Sun God, whatever they, Sun Emperor, like what are they doing with all these mutants? How does this fit into the maker's plans at all? And like we finally got our first kind of indication of how this all fits together. So 10 out of 10. Peach Momoko continuously killing it. Again, I say this all the time. You could pick this book up just for the art
Oh, for
and
sure.
you would have a great time.
I do want to help you some of the confusion because I do
Yes,
understand this
please
book
do.
can be confusing. So, what exactly from this issue confused you?
So basically, not necessarily confused, but my major question is, so we have Asaku and Kageyama are in that kind of stasis pod, and
Yeah,
we are revealed that they're being watched by Maester, and this is all part of what Viper calls my X, right? I think that's what she calls it.
MYX,
Yeah, like my X,
Uh,
something like that.
like
So
NYX or
exactly.
NYX, but it's my X. Ha ha ha.
That's what I'm saying.
it's
So
the
again, that was like
original.
that's what, how it fits into the maker's plan, right? But my big question again is, so is everything that we've seen thus far, so like what's going on with Maystorm and Nico and all the other characters, is
You're
that
confused what's
just
actually happening,
in,
what isn't happening.
that's what I'm saying. So like,
Okay.
is all that in their brain, or is that
The big fight is
outside?
not actually happening.
That's I got that. I figured that big fight's not happening, but
Yes.
so Maystorm, Nico, all the other characters, Mori, they are outside. Like they do
They
exist
are
and they
outside.
are
They exist.
doing.
Yes, they're real.
So
They're
at the
outside.
end
They're
of the
doing their
book, when
thing.
we see May and all of them kind of come together, that's real. Like that's really happening.
That's the first time that whole group has really truly come together. Like
Okay.
Maystorm's quote unquote X-Men are really starting to come together there because there's a lot of X lore, just name drop wise,
Oh yeah.
in groups and factions within this book. Like in the factions consist of like two characters. That's why it's like it's a little all over the place. So everything going on with Shadow King and Armor, not actually happening, but you're exploring what got Armor down to this guilt that she has. And by the way, the story with her and like the kid from the very first arc who took
Toshibo.
his own life and
Yes.
is gut wrenching. Like you totally understand why she's feels this guilt, and it's so middle school too. Like
Mhm.
with the story that's being told, it's heart wrenching. It's gut wrenching.
So everything with Hisaku and Kageyama has not been real throughout the book.
Not since they got captured.
Okay. Okay.
Since they
Got it.
got captured, yeah, since they got captured, they've kind of been the stasis together where Shadow King is just kind of like pushing Armor further and further and
Into
further,
dark
and
armor.
they're reaching certain levels within the astral plane, which we got an astral plane drop, which is wild.
Mhm.
Um, going further into that, it's
Okay.
a lot.
So yeah.
There's a lot going on, but they're essentially pushing these two to further their levels of their mutantdom. But
And
this is very secluded to this small town in Japan, which is very funny.
yeah, I got another question for you really quickly. People won't know what I'm talking about unless they've read the run, so I apologize. But did you get a little X-23 vibes from Surge in this issue? I'm not off base there, right?
I was thinking the same thing too because she
Yeah.
came out of Doku, and I was like, "What?" But that's part of like that trippy dream esque type of
No,
thing. So like, who
exactly.
knows
But
what's going on with
I was like, there's no way that's
that?
a coincidence. She's two characters?
Yeah. Daredevil. Cold Day in Hell. This is a brand new 3-issue story from Charles Soule and Steve McNiven. This has been pitched as Daredevil's Dark Knight Returns. I see elements of that in here. I see elements of that. Is it exactly? No, but it's old man Daredevil who retired. He lost his powers at one point. They come back in this issue. And this world that is kind of unfurled around them kind of entered a nuclear war type of situation where some people in this issue are very disgusting. Like they've been through a lot. And you get some little cameos here and there. It reminds me a little bit, slightly, of Avengers Twilight.
I was going to say the same thing.
Not exactly, but a little bit. Alternate futures, old man Daredevil, putting things away, coming back, and what he's doing with his life. TJ, what'd you think about this? By the way, this issue is $7. This was a $6.99 issue.
I didn't know that when I put it on my polls.
I didn't know that either.
But, I mean, I enjoyed it. I thought we talked about this, I think, last week. I'm a sucker for the, grizzled old man. Like, I'm too old for this, getting dragged back into the game. Like, I like that kind of story trope. And I mean, this fit the bill with all that. I totally agree. To me, it almost felt like this could be like a soft sequel to Avengers Twilight. Like, this is in the same kind of world. It really feels like that same kind of vein.
A little bit.
But I will say there were a couple things that I thought were a little, like, I guess you could say cheesy a little bit, which it's comics, baby. That's where comics are built on cheese. Mm-hmm. But I just thought it was just kind of a little like, can I get into like slight spoiler?
I think that's fine. Yeah.
So basically it's like Daredevil lost his powers, which I also thought was a little weird. Cause like, I don't know. To me, it's like Daredevil doesn't really have superpowers. It's because he's blind. His senses are crazy. I don't know. That's how I think of it. But
and the radiation, sir.
I mean, yeah, but that just took his eyes, really. But what I'm saying is, in the issue, it's like there's just this bomb, and they're basically just like, oh yeah, the bomb had the same chemicals that made him blind. And I was just like, really? Like, that's kind of like, I don't know, just kind of felt a little lazy to me. But I mean, again, it doesn't ruin the book for me. It was still cool. It was just kind of like I felt like we could have got here in like a better way instead of just like, oh yeah, radiation again. It just so happens to be the exact same kind from 50 years ago. So that was a little, and again, I just don't see why he necessarily had to lose his powers. Like, to me, if he's old, it makes sense that his senses are, not as good. So I think it would have been a little cool to see him like overcoming that, instead of just like not having it and just like, okay, now you have him again. Like, I think it would have been cool to see him kind of struggle with his senses being dampened, but like he's still, he can still flip around a little bit. But again, those are very minor kind of critiques. I'm like being a harsh critic, but yeah, it was good.
It's like the Infinity Gauntlet giving mostly Gamma for the Hulk in the MCU.
Exactly.
There's a villain reveal in this issue, but they don't say who it is. I want your guess on who you think this villain is. I'll say this, AF. Maybe you can guess before we say it. It's a man who's in this universe, hates Daredevil, and he's very shaky. TJ.
I wouldn't even know where to begin. I haven't been keeping up with Daredevil stuff, so I'm passing this over to TJ. Floor is yours.
I mean, I could just be really stupid. Same thing with the sleeper conversation with all new Venom. I felt like it was obviously Bullseye.
It's like, obviously Bullseye.
Yeah, there is even a line that he says like Target. I forget what the context is, but as soon as it said Target, I'm like, okay, for sure, Bullseye, 100%.
It's a Bullseye who's, lost his edge. He's shaky all over the place, a little stuttery. Interesting concept. Like the old man of it all. The old man of it all. Well, I was confused a little bit because earlier on in the issue, they talked about like General Barton's forces going in, and then we cut to this guy. So I was like, is this supposed to be Clint? And I was like,
That
nah,
would've
it's
been crazy.
like it's definitely Bullseye. X-Men number 14, written by Jed McKay, penciler Ryan Stegman, inker JP Mayer, colorist Marte Garcia, and letterer Clayton Cowles.
This cover
TJ, I
looks
want you to
dope.
start off with this one, actually.
What were you gonna say, AF?
I said this cover looks dope.
Yeah, the cover's great, and I mean, it was a good issue. Not mind blowing, not groundbreaking. It's kind of just a little. I wouldn't say fun because it's like it's a serious, like they're looking for a lost kid. But yeah, just a little adventure for our X-Men team. They're searching for this kid who said she was a mutant, but then they thought she wasn't, but now she, typical X-Men stuff. But the real interesting thing about this issue was we're kind of going back to the first arc of this run that deals with, Damon, you'll help me out. It's like this mutant virus.
If anyone remembers the Legacy virus, we're
Yes.
bringing that back, baby.
Yes, legacy
Yeah.
virus. So they introduced that in like the first like 3 or 4 issues, and then we got very sidetracked with all these other missions. So now we're kind of getting back to that. So that's exciting to see where that's going to go. We got Cassandra Nova is playing around and doing bad stuff. So yeah, it was a fine issue. Again, not groundbreaking, but good X-Men adventure.
That crack in the glasses. Does that look like a spider web to anybody?
Unintentionally. I think it's just cracking the
know.
glasses.
is
but
it?
Could
Could be a
little bit.
sign.
Good
Or
lord.
is it?
Good lord. Oh, good
Gwenpool.
lord. I was gonna say jackpot.
Yeah, jackpot.
Yeah, look, this issue's fine. I've been keeping up with this X title just because Ilyana's in it. And she has a couple moments in here. Jed writes her more in a comedic way. Like that sarcastic. She has back and forth with Juggernaut a lot. The leader who just kind of like tells you to F you. He writes her like that, and that's fine. It's definitely an aspect of her. She has a lot more aspects to that. But we're just kind of like playing off of that with her. It's fine. Ryan Stegman's art in here is really growing on me.
I love Stegman,
Like,
dude.
look, it's weird. Characters look a little odd and a little blocky, but it feels classic in a way. And I like it. I like when some things aren't house style and they have some character to them. Like Beast in here looks freaky. And I
love Beast design in this.
I love it. So it's a fine issue. We go back to a lot of like Cassandra Nova stuff, especially going back to like with that girl who she's like, I am a mutant, and her whole story is pretty sad. Like she's a girl who like she thinks she's a mutant. Her mom is so anti-mutant that she brings her to like anti-mutant rallies, and she hates being there, and she feels bad because she sees like the X-Men trying to help people. So she goes to the X-Men and say, I'm a mutant. I know it in my soul. Beast does DNA testing on her and is like, nope. And then we technically just kidnapped this kid who's not a mutant. So we need to bring her back. It throws her back, and then it turns out, here's a twist. We mentioned Cassandra Nova of it all. Twist, everyone. You ready? She has a mutant inside of her because she had a twin. And the twin is inside of her, who is a mutant, and is now starting to come out. Very Cassandra Nova of it all.
Plot twist.
Plot twist.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's what's going on in X-Men.
I will say too, the story is I enjoy the story, and like I said, we're kind of starting this new arc. But honestly, for me, what really keeps me coming back to this is the team. I really enjoy this X-Men team and like their dynamics between each other. That's like my favorite parts of the book.
TJ, Immortal, Thor, we brought it up earlier. Al Ewing, artist. Jan Bazaldua, colorist. Matt Hollingsworth, letterer. Joe Sabino. What on earth is going on in this book? Beautiful cover, by the way.
Yeah, Alex Ross covers are killing it. I'll try to make this one quick, but it was a really great issue. I know a couple weeks ago I had some criticisms for Immortal Thor, but that was more so for the accessibility of it. But the story has been great. And this issue is super, super interesting. Honestly, even if you're not reading Immortal Thor, I recommend picking this up because they do something really cool and interesting where it's like interactive comic. So in the story, we're in what's called Utgard Hall, which is like this realm outside of realms, crazy comic stuff. but it's a place that's like continuously changing. It's all, the hallways, change, whatever. So the issue starts out with the Utgard Loki giving you these like rules, and it's very like kind of like cryptic riddle kind of shit. And it's like he has this coin, and he's basically like, if you do tails, you go backwards, but if you do heads, you progress forward. And so throughout the issue, you like can make choices of whether you go forward or backward. And I haven't had time to like
That's
really
so interesting of a concept.
Yeah, it's like I said, I haven't really had time to really go into it and like really kind of investigate. I did a quick read of it for the show. But yeah, it's like it's really cool. It's really interesting, and I just think while I enjoy the book and like the story itself is really good, anyone out there who's a Thor fan, I highly recommend it. But again, this was just so creative and an interesting way to tell a story and to just make it so interactive. It's really, really cool.
That's super fun. I love when comics do stuff like that. We mentioned that with like, this is a little different because that was more about the physical medium of it all. But one of the things that like comics can do is the Scholastic Book Fair of it all, the fun things with like how we mentioned with that Absolute Martian Manhunter, where you can put it up to the light and you see the previous pack page leak through the front page, and it's just so cool. So that's super fun. I really, really love that. So this is kind of like a standalone issue.
No, it definitely ties in to the main story. And I mean, if you're reading it, you'll probably be confused of what's going on in the story. But again, I recommend just because it's so kind of creative. I haven't really seen something like that before. AF, you'll know what I'm talking about. The closest thing I can think of is Jeremy Adams' Flash. He did an issue with Dr. Fate, and it was like, it like told you like how to turn the pages, and like depending on the way you turn the panels, like it played out differently. And again, I just think that stuff is really fun. And like you said, Damon, really kind of highlights why comics are the medium that they are, like why you can do certain things in a comic that you can't necessarily do in these films or the animation or even like, a regular novel. So I always love that kind of stuff.
AF, I apologize it took so long, but we're here.
I'm good. I'm good. I love listening to you guys speak about Marvel Comics as well. So I'm all good. But
Arrow
yeah,
number 22, written by Chris Condon, artist Montos, colors Adriano Lucas, and letter Hassan Osmani Alao. What is going on here? Because when I saw this cover, I thought we were getting Toxic Avenger.
So this is, and I'm going to say it again, it's a Green Arrow run once again, and it's probably the best out of all the all-in titles, the main line universe titles. And that's just because this dude is ground level. This dude is trying to solve all of these murders from the freshwater killer. There is quite a few panels with blood, with some vomit. So yeah, they're not leaving any swing behind, but it's just such a well-written story. They find out that the freshwater killer isn't one person; it's a group of people, and essentially, it's in the town of Freshwater. And there's this place called Horton Chemicals, and they've basically poisoned the water and the water supply in the city. So everybody who ends up drinking the water ends up with some sort of disability, like 2 rows of front teeth, and with a hand that has like 7 or 8 fingers, or like crazy stuff like that. But at the beginning of each of the issues so far since Chris took over, there's been a 2 or 3 page story of this small little kid that's been diagnosed with epilepsy because of this poisoned water. And in this issue, it's an amazing sort of reveal that just shows us that that happened in the past, and this guy is all grown up. He has this following of all these people that were affected by the poisoned water. And although it's not revealed, my theory or my understanding now is that this group of people are the freshwater killers. because they're going after all of these powerful people that were part of Horton Chemicals. And a person that was CEO of the company, one Oliver Queen. So he's running around masquerading as the Green Arrow, but about 10 to 15 years ago, he was CEO of this company, and they had a huge hand to play in the futures of all of these kids that ended up drinking that water. So, yeah, I think that Chris Condon, he nails this so well. There's no supernatural stories in here. There's no multiversal stuff, no time travel. It's just plain old on the ground, trying to catch a killer, trying to catch a mob, working with the police department, working with the council. I love Green Arrow. I love Oliver Queen. In the setting, this is where he shines the brightest. And yeah, I'm so in on this. Like, I don't think I'm going to stop reading it. Chris is an amazing writer. Montos, what an artist. I'm just going to pick this up right here. I don't know if you guys can see this, but in every issue, he does the either the intro credits or the end credits with the in the panels with the writers, with the artists. It's so cool. It's like you're watching a movie or you're watching a show. So
Nice.
yeah,
I love that.
it's so cool because you basically imagining this fight scene taking place with the credits happening in the same panel. It's great. What
Love
an
that.
artistic choice.
Justice League Unlimited, written by Mark Waid, artist Dan Mora, colors Tamara Bonvillain, and letter Dave Sharp. Catch us up what's going on in this book and what happens in this issue.
So they basically just revealed everything with this cover, and I hated that. I absolutely hated the fact that they put all of these people on the cover. The Inferno Gang, they've been terrorizing globally. All of, like, they've been looking for powerful people, important people, and at the starting of this issue, the entire, or not the entire, most of the Justice League, they are stationed in Sydney, Australia, because there's a G20 summit happening there, and there's about 30 or so really important people, presidents, kings, princes. They are all at the G20 summit, and in the Infernos decide that this is going to be an amazing opportunity for them to just get rid of all of these important people. The Justice League, they weren't out in the open, so nobody knew that they were there. But once the Infernos strike, all of these important presidents and everybody that's at the G20 summit gets transported to some other plane, some other fantasy realm. They didn't mention where it was, but yeah, they all get transported over there, and Mr. Terrific and Red Tornado and Martian Manhunter, they are on Watchtower trying to like decipher all of these things. And Mark Waid created Impulse. He brought Impulse back for this issue. And Impulse had the most important panel within this issue. And they found out that there was an Inferno member within the G20 ranks. And Bart was the one that ended up finding out who it was. It doesn't end up well for him because when he actually calls this guy out, he gets put under some sort of spell, and then that's the last we see of him for this issue. But then they also find out. Sorry?
Is it Airwave?
No, this was one of the people from the G20 that was basically like a sleeper agent. Airwave does come out, and everybody's like, "Oh, he betrayed us." So he goes with the Infernos, but we find out who the Infernos are, and as you can see on this cover, Lex Luthor, Black Manta, Joker, Grodd, all of these people, they are all part of the Infernos, but not the present day Legion of Doom. These are all people from the past, and that is where this issue is going to cross over with Batman Superman World's Finest.
Oh,
They are doing a crossover. Yeah. So they're going into the past with all of these things because that title, it's set in the past. It's not present day stuff. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Legion of Doom came to be in this Inferno organization. I definitely think it's gotten to do with the dark side stuff. It's probably some warped reality type thing. But yeah, it was a great issue. The art was great. Mark Waid, he's obviously like he loves Impulse, so his speech bubbles weren't words, it were pictures. So that was cool because we know that Bart Allen, he's also he's a joker. He takes everything lightly. Wally absolutely had it up until here with him during this issue because he's trying to make light and trying to make jokes out of this very serious situation. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a fun issue, but yeah, I hated that they included such a big spoiler on the cover.
That sucks. Yeah, that sucks. I don't like that. Last book of the week. This is from our friends over at Mad Cave. This is written by Joe Harris, artist Russell Mark Olson, and letterer Carlos M. Manguel. This is called Pastime. This is a baseball book with a vampire twist. And that's pretty much the story right now. We got a guy who could have been the greatest baseball player of all time, but he was a vampire, so he had to play at night. And night games did not happen in baseball in the US for a long while. It even shouts out a very famous game in 1988. 1988. That is not that long ago, folks. That was the very first night game at Wrigley Field in Chicago. So cool little baseball stories there. TJ, what do you think about this issue?
It was fun. I mean, we've talked about this during Blood Hunt. I'm a fan of vampires, so any vampire story I'm into. And I mean, just the concept of it is just really fun. Like you said, a baseball player who's a vampire and can only play in night games. I love that concept. We haven't really got like too much into it yet, so I'm excited to get into like the nuances of how that works. And, as a Chicago boy, it just is great to see Wrigley Field featured in a comic book. So pluses all around for me.
AF, did you check this out?
I did not, but it is in the Slack, so I probably will go check it out now. This baseball concept sounds a bit wild to me. Like, shouldn't a vampire's senses and his strength and everything just like be elevated? How is he going to be pitching that ball? It's probably going to be traveling at a gazillion miles per hour.
It's like Clark playing football in Smallville. He just has to like bring his powers all the way back.
Getting some Twilight vibes here. There's something about vampires and baseball, baby.
Yeah, vampires love baseball, dude.
Don't know why. You think it'd be another sport. Pretty fun issue. Yeah, if you like baseball, if you like vampires, you want a little bit of twist between the two that doesn't have to deal with Twilight. Here's your book. All right, next week's polls. Very light week. Thank goodness.
You only got 3? Dude.
Thank goodness. Oh my goodness. This month is crazy. I got Absolute Batman number 7, Doctor Strange of Asgard number 2, and the Ultimates number 11, where TJ, you asked a question. What happened to Ultimate Loki? We're going to find out in this issue. What you got next week?
Ooh, well, I wish I had as light of a pull list as you do, but I have the same as you do. Absolute, Doctor Strange, Ultimates 11. And on top of that, I also have Daredevil number 20, The Incredible Hulk number 24, which I am still saying is one of the best books over at Marvel, not including the Ultimate line, but main universe books. Phoenix number 10, another book I have really been loving. Anyone out there who has been enjoying Maria Audeli's Storm, I highly recommend checking out Phoenix as well. Very similar vein. And then Uncanny X-Men number 13, another book that I have been loving. I love the little kind of family dynamic we get in there. So yeah, it's going to be a really fun week.
Very fun week, AF. What you got?
Yeah, so Absolute Batman number 7 drops next week as well for me. And then I think it's Ghost Spider number 12. That also comes up. but obviously I only get it next week, so I won't be able to speak about it. But what I probably would be able to speak about is the Secret Six, which releases this week. So the second issue of that, I was hooked immediately in the first one. So yeah, I can't wait to see what Nicole Maines does in future issues.
For sure, for sure. I may not be here next week. So TJ may be taking the reins
Y'all are
on all
stuck
that.
with me for next week.
Much lighter show next week. We pushed this one over an hour, very late for us, especially for a live show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you made it this far, leave us a like. Let us know what books were your favorites of the week. And as always, before we go, make sure you go out and support your local comic shop. Go to local comic or comicshoplocator.com to find your comic shop closest to you. Thank you, everyone. Until next time.